Hey guys, it's September 17th, 2017, and this is episode 113 of At Percussion. I'm your host, Casey Cangelosi, and with me as usual are Megan Arns.
Hello.
And Ben Charles.
Hey everybody. Casey, I have a question.
Oh, yeah.
What's all that stuff in your office?
There's a lot of
stuff.
Like
Like some rototoms, some flowers. What is all this?
There's a lot going on here. My office is finally, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 workable stations to teach and practice in.
Are those all your multi-percussion pieces?
No. Let's see, what are we looking at? One is mine and one is by Diana McIntosh, this piece that Beverly Johnston hipped me to called All Too Consuming that I'm preparing for our Contemporary Music Festival, in which we're featuring Canadian composers.
Cool.
Yeah, so there's a lot going on there. That's what the flowers are, the table with flowers and all of that.
Laurel didn't send you flowers.
No, but it is Laurel's birthday today.
Happy birthday, Laurel.
Oh!
Yeah. So she said her one birthday wish was to not do the podcast. The one break. No, just kidding. She
gets the day off.
Yeah, she's traveling right now.
Well, speaking of birthdays, I'd like to send a shout out to my sister. It's her birthday today, too.
Aw, what's her name?
Elizabeth.
Happy birthday, Elizabeth.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm pretty sure she's not listening, but it's worth a try.
Well,
It'll
let's
also
sing,
be
guys.
like-
Ready? Okay, everybody
2 weeks
sing.
later.
1, 2.
I'm not singing.
What pitch are we going off of here?
But do you know the most common birthday of the year?
Is what?
September 16th.
Is that right?
Yeah.
How do you
More
know
people
that?
have
What were
birthdays than
9
any-
months before September 16th?
Sorry. How do you know that? What's the reasoning there? It just happens to be?
There are more babies born on the 16th than any other day.
Oh.
It's probably because people have breaks in January and they're all cuddling up because it's real cold outside.
Right.
You know? So
Yeah, and
lots of babies are made in
just
January.
9 months ago, Christmas and New Year's.
Should we explain how babies are made? Is that? I thought that's where that was going. Sorry. Hey, well, I'm gonna
Fun
go
fact,
ahead.
I still have the same Dunkin' Donuts coffee here from 8 o'clock this morning in the airport.
Donkey.
That might be how my day's going. Sorry, tangent.
I think you're doing fine. You know what? I'm gonna skip that thing and we'll get back to it. And I'll introduce Jason right now. You guys, our guest today is the owner of JG Percussion and former timpanist of the San Diego Symphony Orchestra. He has performed with the LA Phil and the Fort Worth Symphony, and has formerly held the position of principal timpanist with the Peoria Symphony and the Duluth Superior Symphony Orchestras. So, hello and welcome, Jason Ginter. How's it going?
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me. It's an honor to be on the show, and I really appreciate what you guys are doing.
Hey, you're very, very welcome. So, even though Ben is an IP artist and Megan is a Vic Firth artist, we are a nonpartisan show, and we thought it'd be nice to reach across the aisle and celebrate your company. Your company is huge. Yeah, there you go, Ben. I've seen the mallets all over, but I had no idea your company was this big. How did that happen?
I mean, it still feels small, and we still make everything by hand. There's just 2 guys that make all the sticks, me and my production manager, Danny. We're coming up on our 10-year anniversary in January of 2018.
Awesome.
Yeah, it started when I was in grad school at Carnegie Mellon. Started making sticks for friends and for colleagues. And then former teachers started calling and asking if I would make some sticks for them. And then it kind of took off from there.
Well, that's great. It's amazing that it's that small, but that widespread. I mean, it must just be really, that's what a cool thing.
Hey,
Thanks.
Jason.
Yeah, it's a fun challenge.
Jason, I was wondering, we had Ron Samuels on like a week or 2 ago, and we talked quite a bit about rosewood and sort of the scarcity of materials. And I don't think so, but I was just wondering, is there any scarcity of materials involved in making timpani mallets? Like bamboo, I know grows very quickly, so I don't think there would be, but I was just curious.
Yeah, not in bamboo, but in hardwoods especially. So like ebony, it has become more and more difficult to get. So I was hiking in San Diego, and I met this Japanese guy walked up to me. This is a couple years ago, and he had just gotten off a plane from Tokyo, and he's a rep for Taylor Guitars in San Diego, and because that company is based here. And so he asked if we could hike together, and I said, yeah, that was fine. And So he started telling me about how Bob Taylor has he bought an ebony factory in Cameroon, because apparently Cameroon is the only country where you can export ebony. And so Bob Taylor went to Cameroon to see how they select the ebony to use for his guitars. So they went out in the forest, and the guys in Cameroon said, okay, so we cut down the tree and we look at it, and if the color is completely black, then we take it. And if it's not completely black, then we leave it in the forest. And he said, well, how many trees do you cut down before you find one that's perfectly black? And they said 10.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So they tested the density on all of the wood with color variations and the ones that were perfectly black, and it was all the same. It was the same high density wood. So he started using that in his top of the line guitars to let the industry know this is the same quality stuff.
You know,
so that's one of the challenges with hardwoods.
Sure. Well, and ebony was one of the woods they named when I was trying to do some research for the Ron Samuels episode, which I ended up not being able to be on anyway, but they did mention ebony. Ebony is one of those trade woods that there's a dirty market for, and it's really scarce and really rare.
Yeah, I just quickly looked it up on Wikipedia, and there's a section on legislation, and one of the points is in 2012, the Gibson Guitar Company was raided by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service for violations of the Lacey Act of 1900, which prohibits the importation of threatened woods and other materials. So,
whoa.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
Jason, has your factory ever been raided?
I'm going to call it in.
No.
Well, speaking of people screwing up, I don't know if you guys know, but nothing makes me feel more in control of my own life than hearing about someone else's epic screw up. And the one that was on the table this week came through a Boston Globe article, and the headline is "Ambitious Rhode Island Music Fest Ends in Failure of Epic Proportions." Did you guys see this article?
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, what a mess. I just don't understand how you get that far in. I mean, I could see like screwing up a couple of things or things falling through here or there, and like it, not being a great festival, but it's just like line after line after line of not being able to pay, huge artists not being able, the venue falling through, grants not coming through, donors pulling out. It's like, is this a joke? It almost seems like an Onion article, but it's
Southwest
too long.
Airlines commercial. Want to get away?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and
exactly.
And it's speaking of so many things going wrong and not ending it at the appropriate time, our friend Maria Finkelmeyer did mention, because she's of course successfully organized many things, and just kind of it's been fun to read the responses and reactions on Facebook. But something she said is you've got to know and know how to respond to red flags. You got to be able to recognize red flags in your process. And something that Fernando Meza said is, speaking about organizing the big festival he did in 2010, which there are all sorts of things came in his way, and the volcano in Europe went off, the volcano in Iceland, and every flight from Europe was canceled. And I mean, I can't imagine a more difficult thing to work through, but he worked through it, and he said you just have to have a backup plan for absolutely everything.
Yeah.
I feel like also
a rain plan, a volcano plan.
Right, a volcano plan. Sorry, Jason?
No, but many contracts talk about that, right? That's the act of God clause. It's like contract to be indemnified if there's a volcano in Iceland, right? But what the article seemed to be talking about was just poor management.
Right.
Yeah. Well,
I don't know about you guys. I've dealt extensively with poor management of this sort. When I was in Miami, I would play with the Miami Symphony from time to time, which was, I don't even know how much money they still owe me, but I get a check for like $100 every 15 months or something like that of their payment plan.
Really?
And this was dating back to like 2012. And so they would continue to book concerts and promised to pay the musicians, but it would be basically, we'll pay you when we can, not how it should be. And like the really screwed up thing about them is that there was one concert where they flew an oboist in from Europe. I think it was from France, or maybe it was Portugal, I don't know. But they flew an oboist in from Europe just to play in the orchestra, not like a concerto artist or anything, just someone to play oboe, I guess because no one in Florida would play. And they paid that person like a check at the gig, but then no one else in the orchestra got paid for it until, I'm still, like I said, getting paid for it. So yeah, I've dealt with all sorts of, it's really only that organization, but all sorts of horror stories like this. And I think the biggest issue is that the organizer doesn't know when to say no, doesn't know when to say we can't do that. And like Miami Symphony, for example, there's so much money in that city. There's no excuse for that symphony to be so poorly funded. They should start like a chamber music series and hire 12 musicians to play like a Mozart serenade or something to raise money toward the goal of creating a full orchestra, not just keep booking a full orchestra and playing Bernstein symphonic dances from West Side Story and like these hugely expensive works that require an expensive rental and all these extra percussionists and a gigantic orchestra just to make simply happen. So yeah, I think it's just a matter of not knowing when to say no. Sorry for the double negative, but yeah.
Yeah, and it kind of seems like you're mentioning the Miami Symphony, and that's an established organization
sort of,
with a board of directors and lots of people. Yeah, but there are lots of people involved, right? Yeah. And the thing that really strikes me with this also is that, first of all, this guy is 25 years old. And second of all, like, who else is involved? I don't think it really mentioned, there are a couple names, but they're of people who didn't get paid. It doesn't mention, I don't think, any other members of the organizing team of this festival.
And like, I have no idea.
It's just kind of like,
sorry, I keep interrupting. I have no idea how this 25-year-old guy with basically no experience managed to like reel in Philip Glass, who eventually dropped out. But like, I can't imagine with no experience being 25 years old booking Philip Glass to write a piece.
Well, that's what I mean. I mean, why is Philip Glass's manager not catching this? Or, maybe it's also a lesson. This is, of course, an extreme example, this article is, but it's a lesson in, like, making sure you're reading the contracts carefully and knowing what you're getting yourself into. So, I don't know. Didn't that also say that there was some other failed project that he did? So, also, asking around and saying, does anyone know this person? What's up with this festival?
Sorry, Jason, what did you say?
The insult to injury on the article for this guy was when they mentioned that he's still living with his mother.
I know.
Yeah. It was like, ugh.
Well, and that was something I wanted to get to with you guys. Of course, we should probably read a little from the article so all our listeners are kind of, have a little background on this. But do you feel sorry for the guy?
No.
I mean, I kind of do. Of course, it's all his own fault, but so many of people's mistakes are their own fault, I mean, it's usually a person's own fault when something they do, something terrible happens to them,
I just feel like how is he projecting that this would turn out?
Right.
At what point did what exactly was his vision, and how did he actually think he would get there, having not really done anything like that successfully before? Like, start on a small scale and make something small work.
Of course. And I mean, I guess obviously we all know that, and the people responding to it all know that. But I guess for us, four in the room, what do you think the takeaway for us is as teachers? And we have students his age,
Right.
Get it in writing. Get a contract. I mean, so much of what we do is based on the honor system, right? And that's one of the benefits that we enjoy as musicians. It's like we work with colleagues that are often our friends, and we get hired for gigs on text message or informally, and it's great. But occasionally it backfires.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, and I'm amazed. Yeah. I'm amazed how many times, and apparently with this one, there were plenty of contracts floating around, and in fact, he's in wrapped up in $120,000 worth of owed money to people. And Megan mentioned Philip Glass's, I think it was his producer. This woman was out $15,000 of her own money that she had to pay her own production team. So I mean, the takeaway for me as a teacher is, okay, I need to be really careful when I'm telling my students that thing we're told of, hey, take risks. You know, taking risks is important. Put it all on the line. Do something that's really going to turn heads. And, you know, like, we got to be careful. Like, okay, what I mean is, what we mean by that is like a very calculated risk. like,
Yes.
Don't just show up at the whatever competition having, I don't know, you know, doing something too extreme, or sure as hell don't do this freaking thing. You know, this guy, maybe he was fueled by this, oh, I got to like put it all out there and I got to put it all on the line if I'm going to make anything of myself or whatever. And I just wonder if we need to clarify that to our students more as a takeaway out of this, you know?
Yeah, I think.
Right. I think that's a good takeaway. And I think also that's a good lesson to, or a good like project. Something I've been doing recently is like helping them organize a concert, like as part of their lesson, you know, and it's just like every week when we meet for their lesson, we check in about that, you know, and I'll give them kind of a different assignment every week. Like, okay, this week, we're going to send emails to these 10 people. And then next week, let's see what response we got. And then the next week we're going to create the program or whatever, you know, but kind of help guide them through a process of, and checking in with them every week in their lesson and teaching them how to organize a concert, because it's not an easy thing. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I didn't organize a concert. Well, maybe I did when I was in school, but I think that's an important thing to learn while in school, not just to play the concerts, but to organize the concerts and to learn how to program and things like that. It's important as well.
And I think there's a risk, and then there's also a calculated risk. Like, I could say today, I'm going to do a concert next month in the Meyerson Symphony Center in Dallas, and I'm going to have $100,000 of sponsorship, and it's going to be amazing. We're going to sell out the hall. But that would be a very stupid risk for me to take. Whereas I could come up with a much smaller idea that's somewhat risky, and if it breaks down, I might have to pay $500 of my own money, but I'm also not out $100,000 if it didn't work. And Jason started a company, so I'm sure he can tell us about calculated risks in that capacity.
Yeah. It's a matter of biting off more than you can chew. And so, like, for example, with buying supplies, right? I buy a lot of bamboo, and it all comes from China. So I could buy 10,000 pieces of bamboo, or I could buy 100,000 pieces, right? But it's managing the amount of bamboo that I need versus the amount that I want.
I often get the same. I often get that same question with publishing. Students or young composers will say, "How did you start, and what do I do, and what kind of massive, awesome printing machine should I buy?" And I say, like, "Well, wait a minute. What's the quantity you expect to move?" And yeah, there's always a cart before the horse before the carriage kind of question thing with them. I forget how that saying goes, but you get what I'm saying. Yeah, why would you buy?
Putting the horse before the carriage.
Is that what it is? Yeah. Why would you? Why would you buy that much bamboo for mallets that you're not sure you're going to sell? And that's what I've learned with them. They don't want to, or a lot of people just don't want to take it really slow. And I tell them, man, I printed from my desktop monochrome printer for years, and I still haven't bought a massive copy machine. I actually use a print shop. And incremental steps as possible, and it might take a decade, you know.
Absolutely. A lot of people equate growth with success, and in my experience, it's not necessarily linear. There's a great quote from David Attenborough. He says that to expect infinite growth on a planet with finite resources, you would have to either be an idiot or an economist.
Yeah,
I mean, Coca-Cola could sell more soda, and Apple could sell more computers, but would that make it a stronger company or a better company? Or if we sold more mallets, and then we didn't have the ability to make them all by hand, then, in my opinion, the product would suffer, and it wouldn't be worth selling 10% or 15 or 100% more.
Yeah, sure. Well, just to add a few more bits of information to it, something they did say, he booked Philip Glass, had a contract for the Philip Glass Ensemble, as well as Andre Previn, the composer of Lord of the Rings soundtrack. And Academy Award winner Andre Previn and Lord of the Rings composer Howard Shore, So these are like the biggest names there. And apparently what happened with Philip Glass is their production team went to look at the venue. He had this venue planned, and he ended up having to use a high school. They saw the high school, emailed him about it. He wouldn't respond. He wouldn't get back to them. And he failed, I guess, 2 scheduled payments to them, and they finally pulled out. And I guess by that time, Philip Glass's production manager, producer, whatever, was already in for $15,000 of her own. And a lot of the things you'll read, they'll compare this to the Fire Festival. I don't know if you guys have heard about that big Fire Festival thing that happened. So it's a pop music festival, I think. Blink-182 and a lot of pop artists, and it was this thing scheduled to be somewhere in the Bahamas on an island, and it's very easy to find information about this. So instead of this amazing food and gourmet chefs and all these artists showing up, the whole thing just kind of imploded, and instead the guests came and had to eat cheap food out of FEMA tents, and it was kind of it was almost a real serious crisis. So on one hand, I don't like the comparison because that was almost a dangerous situation. This was not dangerous. This was like, I don't know. I don't like how they sensationalize it and try to make this comparison. It's like, no, dude, these people were out some money for sure, and this dude is screwed now. If he can ever pay these people back or ever recover from this, I mean, I would be amazed.
Yeah, and for those of you who didn't see this article come across on Facebook, it's in the Boston Globe, and it's called, the title is Ambitious Rhode Island Music Fest Ends in Failure of Epic Proportions.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, you're that guy. And there's a giant picture of the guy.
Yeah. I don't know. Of course he screwed up. Of course he's an idiot, but I feel bad for him. Like he's so screwed now,
Yeah.
Maybe he can, all those rent payments he's not making because he's living with his mom, he can pay the musicians.
See, and then people tease him. They're going to tease him for the rest of his life. People like Ben.
That was terrible,
Goes on
sorry.
a date on Tinder and like, oh, so what do you do? Oh, I had a music festival. Don't Google it.
Right.
Right, exactly.
Oh, where do you live? Not with my mom.
Right. I have my own place. Yeah. Oh, man. Hey, someone fire Jason a Facebook question.
All right, here we go. So we've got a question from Will Marinelli. He asks, is there any sort of new or different material that you wish to experiment with for future pairs of mallets?
All right. Thanks, Will, for the question. Good to hear from you. Hope you're doing well in New York. We are finally prototyping a line of wood ball sticks. There's been a lot of requests for these, obviously for timpani stuff, but then for multi-percussion stuff and for toms and that kind of thing. So I'm working together with James Wyman. He's the timpanist in Baltimore Symphony to put something out. It's going to be sort of like a hybrid wood stick and Baroque stick. And we should have that out for PASIC 2017.
Cool. So that's coming up.
Oh, yeah.
Do you have a desire, speaking of branching into multi-percussion and a different type of timpani mallet, if the opportunity and time and resources presented themselves, would you start making marimba mallets and triangle beaters? And there's so much out there. Is that the natural growth of this?
Perhaps. I think maybe not marimba mallets because I'm not really a marimba player. I mean, I still play quite a bit in addition to making sticks. So it's a conscious choice for me to spend my time playing because I really enjoy it and I love playing orchestral music. I get to play extra with San Diego, Pacific Symphony, LA. It's not something that I want to give up. So yeah, maybe in the future as I have more time to expand to other stuff. But I'm really grateful to be able to do so many different things and to have a flexible schedule to do it. And I'm grateful to be a part of such a cool and diverse percussion community. I think sometimes we take that for granted. I know I certainly do. And then going to a show like PASIC is always a reminder. And I see all these people that I talk to all year long on email and on the phone, and they come up and say, "Hey, I just wanted to say hi. We've been talking on email." And for me, that's what I really enjoy about making sticks is the personal connection for it. Mm-hmm. It's the same reason I enjoy playing. It's connecting with my colleagues and with my friends. And
I had a really good tip from my dad just a few weeks ago, I guess. I was venting about something we vent about often, which is the email overload and just the correspondence overload that you live with nowadays. And I was complaining about, I was saying, Dad, people email me questions that they could just Google the answer to, and it's frustrating. Why ask me when you could just Google it? Please just go Google that or just spend a little time. And he says, well, maybe they can't think of a clever question or a specific question, but they just want to make a connection with you. And it made me feel like such a jerk. It's like, oh, God, he's right. Like, he's totally right. And they're just trying to reach out. They're just thinking of some reason to contact you, and they want to see if they can open a dialogue or something. And that's actually really helped with those things, with those what seem like frivolous, quick question and answer kind of emails,
It's a good point.
I know that in a similar vein, I've had multiple students ask me, and I've told Casey about this before, like, I'm working on one of Casey's pieces, so do you think like we could like Skype and he could like, coach me on the piece or something like that? And
$90.
I'm like, I mean, I guess if you wanted to get in touch with Casey and maybe he would charge you, I don't know, but Laurel said like, it's just people just want to meet Casey. That's all it is. Like, there's nothing he can really tell you significantly over a 20-minute Skype session about this piece. So yeah, I think it's very much that just wanting to make a connection.
Yeah. Or think about the times in your life when you got to meet somebody that you idolize, that you look up to. Even if it's somebody that's not like Paul McCartney famous. Like I remember being 12 years old and the Cleveland Orchestra would play at Oberlin College, and I got to go backstage and meet Paul Jančić. And I still have the program that I asked him to sign. And I said, Mr. Jančić, I'm wondering if you'd sign my program. I'd like to be a timpani player someday. And he said, sign your program? I'm not a big deal. I'm not going to sign your program. I said, it would really mean a lot to me, Mr. Jančić. And still to this day, it's a musician that I idolize, and it meant the world to me at the time.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, you have a lot of several signature series mallets, and I think when I first became aware of your mallets was when I was searching for the David Herbert mallets, and I had bought them through whatever company was making them before, and then I couldn't find them again, or they're discontinued, or I can't remember the story. But then somebody had said, oh, this new company, JG Percussion, makes these now. And I was like, sweet. And so that's kind of how I became hip to your company. And then, of course, I remember your wonderful mallet making masterclass at Eastman probably 4 or 5 years ago, maybe great. 5 or 6 years ago. I think that's where I met you in person. But how do you make connections with, how did kind of your different series of mallets come about, and do you still visit universities and do classes like that?
Good question. I met David in San Francisco. Gosh, this was right after I moved to California, so this was like 9 years ago. I went up to San Francisco to hang out with some buddies, and David and I had lunch, and he mentioned that he was looking for a new manufacturer for the sticks and asked if I'd be interested in working with him. And I said, yeah, of course. They're beautiful sticks, and he's a world-class musician. And so he said, okay, what do you need from me to learn how to make my sticks? And I said, well, we got to sit down and I'll learn how you sew them and how you put them together. And he said, okay, well, we got to go visit Judy. And I said, who's Judy? And he said, Judy does all the sewing on my mallets. Her name's Judy Garland. She lives up in Marin. And so we went and sat at Judy's dining room table and sewed timpani mallets. And I haven't learned more about sewing in my entire life than I learned in those 3 hours. It was just a wealth of information. And so a lot of the techniques that I used for putting together David's mallets, I learned at Judy's table.
Wow.
That's so cool. Wow, what a story.
I wanted to chime in and say, Megan mentioned like timpani mallet masterclass or timpani mallet making classes. And Matt Strauss did one of those when I was a student at Miami. And it was like everyone's assignment was take an old pair of mallets home and recover them. And we all came back, and it is the most difficult thing in the world. And you have never seen so many just terrible-looking timpani mallets. and Matt's point was like, the first time you do this, of course, it's not going to be very good, and over time you'll get better at it. You just have to invest in the nice scissors and some felt and all. And that made me realize how much I value really good mallet manufacturers, because it saves me so much time. And Matt's point was that you could craft any sound you wanted, but with the quality of implements that are out there, I really don't feel the need to make my own, because I can get exactly what sound I need from one of Jason's sticks or, such and such marimba mallet. So, yeah.
I appreciate that. Thanks so much. It's just trial and error. And honestly, if you saw some of the first mallets that I did when I was a kid, you'd think, really? This guy?
Do you still have them?
Oh, yeah. Oh, they're in the basement. It's a constant reminder. I remember, because I learned from my teacher in high school, Matt Bassett, plays in Buffalo, and then my teacher at university, Tim Adams. I learned from both of them. And I remember sewing a pair and showing it to Tim, and he's like, let me see. Just takes the felt off. Oh, it's too loose. Do it again.
Huh.
It's a learning experience.
That reminds me of my learning experience crocheting with my grandmother. She gave me like a small ball of yarn and taught me how to do the basic stitch. Did the whole thing, sat there with her and did some of it. And then she said, okay, take it home and finish the ball of yarn. So I took it home and I was stitching, finishing the ball of yarn. I was so proud. I took it back to her. I was like, Grandma, I finished it. And I'm thinking that I could make a scarf now or something that I could actually use. And she ripped it out. She ripped the whole thing and said, do it again.
Oh, no. Snap. Don't mess with grandmas.
Tough love, I guess.
She said she's got to keep practicing.
Well, I have to say it is definitely a skill that I do not have, because the most I would do with this is wrapping marimba mallets, rewrapping them when I was a student, and you have to save money, so you do it this way. And the first one was okay. The second one was the third, and by the time I got to the fourth, the crown was totally crooked. And not because I got worse, I just lost patience with it. I mean, it is a certain zen to doing something like crocheting. Laurel can just sit there for hours, and she never loses patience. She just keeps going. I don't know. I can't sit still that long,
Yeah, you have to enjoy it.
The manufacturing aspect is one of the reasons why I'm encouraged about the future of percussion and the future of sending students out into the world to try to make a career in percussion, because we have so many different avenues that we can explore as performers and educators and drumline and marching band and manufacturing stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Avenues that you wouldn't have if you were maybe a viola player or a bassoon player.
Yeah. Yeah. My student is making giant slapsticks. And they're really good.
Oh, I saw one of those online. I thought that was a joke.
Oh, yeah, he made that one. Yeah, he made that one and a few others. And yeah, he's got cool ideas for stuff to manufacture. And I always see him with a picture of a drill and a saw and actually, yeah, back to our topic there, the Newport music series, taking calculated risks. That would be a really good example. Don't just dive into making complete marimbas, but maybe start with something that you can afford, and if it doesn't sell, you won't be totally sunk. And yeah, that would be a more calculated risk.
So the slapstick thing reminded me, I just have to tell this story. It's my favorite story from my UNT days. We had studio class, and Mark Ford was out one week, so Ed Soph was leading. And so Ed gets up in front of the entire percussion studio and goes, the slapstick from room 142 has gone missing, so whichever one of you kinky bastards took it, please return it.
Oh my God.
The good old days.
Whoa.
Wow. Yeah, today you probably would have been fired. Title IX.
Yeah.
That's called tenure.
Well, guys, I have another What's the Sound segment. I'm going to try to do these. I'm going to try to do these more often, and I'm going to try to thank you, Megan, and I'm going to try to keep them shorter than the Fluxus Liggity one that I did last time. This one will definitely be shorter. So, Megan and Ben, you might know what this is already, but Jason, can you guess what this sound is?
Is that the opening from Pink Floyd from Money?
It's a really good guess.
Boop, 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 boop. It sounds like a prepared toy piano.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, well, there was this.
Interesting,
Here's
yeah.
one portion of it you were hearing. I think this is probably the most toy piano part is this little bell.
And the click of the key, that reminded me of a toy piano.
Oh, good call. Yeah, actually, it has that same, these little levers I have right here. I think it's the same kind of plastic for the keys. You get all that extra sound when you play a toy piano. And yeah, it feels a lot like this. Yeah, well, if you couldn't tell, this was a 6 against 7 against 8 polyrhythm. And if you couldn't tell that, then, you just should never play modern music because obviously everyone could tell that that's what that was. But this is a metronome.
Obviously.
It's a thing called the Bilotti trinome. It's a metronome that was made back in the 70s, like 72 or something, I think. And it's not made anymore. So here I've got these 3 levers, and I can set this one to, say, 2. And then I can set another one to, say, 4. So we'll have 2 on top of 4. And then I can set the next one to 8. So everything will be locked in here. And then, of course, it can also do polyrhythm. So I could take the 8 and put it into the 7 slot.
Oh, it's getting weird.
So,
It's too bad we're not doing video anymore. Everyone's having a dance
crap.
party.
So the question is, like, why is that? Why does that matter? Why is that cool? Your metronome on your phone can do that. I think it's really cool because it's all mechanical. There's nothing digital about it at all. It's electronic. It has a plug that goes into the wall, and that just drives the motor. So if you look at the guts of this thing, it's simply a cylinder that's rotating, and there are these little nodules marked 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And on the nodule number 1, there is one little carved slot so that every time that nodule goes around, it hits 1 time all the way up through 8. So number 8 has 8 little nodules. So it's really cool to show to students when you're exemplifying this concept because it can play these polyrhythms really accurately and there's no complicated mathematics or anything. It's just measurement. It's just evenly spacing the nodules so that you have that.
Wow.
So
That's really cool.
I think it's pretty cool. So that's the Bilotti trinome. If you ever find one, listeners, like on eBay, or if you have one, I will buy it from you.
Casey, where did you get yours?
Are they hard to find?
Can you hold it up so you can see it?
Yeah, sure. And I'll of course edit in some of this for our viewers because they won't get to see this because we're not doing video so much anymore. But it basically looks like that. And yeah, Megan, they are very hard to find. On the back, it says Bilotti Trinome Corporation, New York, New York, manufactured by Industrial Timer Corporation in New Jersey. So if you look up Industrial Timer Corporation today, you won't find the Bilotti Trinome or any metronome, but you'll find these, I guess, machine timers that, various companies that need machinery with timers buy them from one of these companies, I guess. But yeah, they're not around anymore. It's not made anymore. And I looked up, actually, the patent has expired. So I guess it would be legal to reproduce it and even call it the same thing if you wanted to.
Jason, you could diversify your portfolio.
Excellent.
Well, and I actually wrote a piece for the Bilotti trinome, and
That's mean. How are we going to find
right. So it's a terrible piece to write because very few people have them. But you can find a few recordings. It's something that Keith Aleo plays.
Ah.
Yeah. So if you run into the right person, usually of a certain age group, like right around Keith's generation, you will find Bilotti trinome. So Keith has one. Dave Friedman has one. I'm trying to think. I think Harvey Price told me he had one. But they were pretty popular. And answer Ben's question, the way I got mine is my teacher had one. My teacher, Dennis Griffin from Utah State. Yeah, he gave me his.
Wow.
Yeah. I tried to buy it from him, but he gave it to me. So, Yeah, thanks, Dennis.
That's super cool.
Yeah, I'm still enjoying it, and I would love to.
I think from Danley Mitchell.
You has one? Sorry.
There's one in San Diego because Casey, did you say that you wrote that piece for Trinome? My production manager Danny played that on his recital.
Wow, cool.
I suspect he got it from Danley Mitchell, who taught for a long time at San Diego State and member of the Harry Parch Ensemble.
Sure.
Yeah.
I would suspect someone of the Harry Parch Ensemble to think it is cool.
Yeah, cool piece.
Oh, well, thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I wanted to thank you for your contributions to percussion literature. I mean, it's great having your stuff. It's fun to play. It's fun for students to play, and it's accessible too.
Oh, thanks so much. Wow, I really appreciate it. You know, I wrote my first timpani solo piece just recently. Finally.
You had the rad video up of you jamming on it?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That was nice.
Oh, well, thanks. Yeah, it's probably more music boxes than timpani, but it's timpani solo.
This is the music box. Okay, cool.
Oh, yeah, it's a fun one. Let's see. What else did I want to say about this? Let's see. Oh, I found an old advertisement for it, and I thought it was really kind of funny. So this is from, what is this from? This is from the Music Educators Journal, November 1st, 1963, and they're just reviewing some products, and one is the Bilotti Trinome, a new device billed as the rhythm metronome, produces beats with 3 different sounds, a bell, a click, and a talk, each sound beating at different rate and speed, combining various ways to form rhythmic patterns, which can be varied by adjusting the rate of speed of each beat sound to the desired proportion relative to the speed rate of the other 2 beat sounds. Holy crap, that was really complicated sounding. Anyway, that's really all I could find about it. And I searched PAS archives. I found one article about a piece called Knocking Piece, and they just referenced it as we were using our trinome to try to get these rhythms, and they were still difficult, and that was it. So it had nothing really to do with the metronome.
Is that the Ben Johnson knocking piece?
Yes.
Learned about that in percussion literature. Thanks, Bill.
Nice work.
Wow, you have a good memory. Dang.
Wow.
Yeah. So anyway, that's the Bilotti Trinome.
Very cool.
Very cool.
I just put in our little group chat, I was just Googling while you were talking, and there was one that sold at Goodwill last year in Houston for $45.
That's really cheap. That's good.
That's like a pretty good steal for that.
It seems like eBay, they go for $200, and I've seen maybe 2 of them get sold. One of them was supposedly Dave Brubeck's.
Okay.
Sorry, Joe Morello's Bilotti Trinome. Yeah. Hey, well, how about another Facebook question for Jason? Did any of y'all have one?
Yes. Nathan Elliott Siegel. How can you make the non-percussionist members of the committee in a timpani audition, quote unquote, hear the rest of the parts of the orchestra during your audition?
Right. This is a very good question. And it's essential to the whole audition process, right? And playing in the orchestra. One of the coolest things I got to do when I was playing in San Diego was to sit on the committee for an oboe audition and 2 percussion auditions. And it's very different getting that experience of hearing a lot of people playing the same thing, because everyone comes at it from their own context, right? So if you're a bassoon player, you hear the bassoon part first, or if you're a bass player, you hear the bass part. So my teacher, Tim, used to say that good musicians make time for other musicians. And so, like, one example I can think of is it's Beethoven 9th Symphony in the coda, right? The bum, ba-bum, 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 and then the big crescendo, right? So in that spot, if you can hear the basses, it's a built-in metronome, right? So that's one way that you can make time for other people.
Very cool.
So is it enough in general, and I guess we could just question for anybody, to just really know the rest of what's happening in the piece? Is it enough to, as long as you're singing that in your head, it should hopefully come out? You guys think?
Yeah, absolutely. You should hear the music so loud in your head that you want to turn it down.
Cool.
Interesting.
And then fit your own sound into that. So that you're not playing just the excerpt, you're playing the music. Because when you get the job, you have to play the music. And you have to play it the next week. I think there's a disconnect for some students. It's like, I've won the audition, but then you have to go do the job, right? It's a company that needs somebody to do the job, and you need to be prepared to do it.
Switching gears, so we could talk another Facebook question, but I'm going to insert my own question here. And Jason, I'm curious about this percussion festival that you've got coming up.
Right.
What is it? When is it? Where is it? What's going on?
So I am very happy to be a part of the upcoming percussion festival in San Diego in January of 2018. It's curated by Steve Schick from UC San Diego, brilliant multi-percussionist. And fantastic conductor, actually. He's conducting one of the weeks with San Diego Symphony, and then doing some events at UC San Diego. They're still ironing out the details. And then there's going to be a performance of a Nuxuit happening in January. And that's really exciting because it's going to be a collaboration with San Diego percussionists and Northern Mexican percussionists. So it's going to start at there's a park right on the border fence called Friendship Park. And some of the musicians will be on the San Diego side, and some of them will be on the Mexico side. So that'll be fun to work with colleagues down from
That's awesome.
Symphony. It's great living in a place that has such a vibrant musical community. There's a community orchestra in La Jolla, the La Jolla Symphony, and they do a lot of contemporary music. Steve is the music director, and we got to do Mahler 5 a couple of years ago, Nielsen 4th Symphony. And then there's great Latin music in town. There's a symphony and an opera. I feel really grateful to be able to be a part of it.
Yeah, that's really awesome. If I was going to attend that Nuxuit performance or be a part of it, I think I would have a picket sign that said, "Blow conch shells, don't build walls."
That's nice.
I'm coming. I'm going to do it.
They don't know what conch shells are, Megan.
I'll be there.
That sounds great.
Well, Megan, you were going to report on another festival as well, right?
Yes, I was going to do a little follow-up segment. In the Valerie Naranjo episode, I gave a segment about the Wula Drum and Dance Retreat, and it has just now concluded, or is concluding as we speak, on Sunday. But I was fortunate to be able to attend for 24 hours. The festival started on Wednesday night, and I got there when it started, and I stayed for 24 hours. So I thought I'd just tell you guys a little bit about my experience there, which was wonderful. I won't say all the information about the retreat. Go back and listen to Valerie's episode about that. But it was this weekend. It's a drumming and dancing retreat with African music, and most of the music is focused from the area of Guinea and Mali and Senegal in West Africa. And there are tons. The roster of musicians that are there is just insane. And I had studied, I guess I had studied some drumming and dancing with Guineans, but this, to really meet a lot of the famous ones and take classes from them, was really cool. Not only are they incredible drummers and dancers, but they're really good teachers, and they all have totally different teaching styles, and were all the classes I took very engaging and experienced teachers, and like I said, just ridiculous drummers and dancers. So the schedule kind of reminded me of PASIC in a way, where there were 4 or 5 events happening at one time, and there are way fewer people than PASIC. And I think there were fewer people there when I was there because it was the very beginning. I think as the weekend was approaching, there were a lot more people coming in. But I would say the class sizes were maybe anywhere from 15 people to 40 people. The dance classes were a little bigger. The drumming classes were a little bit smaller, which was great because you had a little more individual attention. But everything is taught orally, which is amazing, and everything is hands-on. So there were no just presentations. Everything was participatory. So you're either learning, in the drumming classes, you'd be learning dunun parts, and different djembe parts, or a solo phrase, different solo phrases. And the other thing about this is that this music is so specific to the individual artist that's playing it, right? So there are beats and songs that exist that are traditional, and then there are each artist's interpretation, and there's an element of improvisation that comes into that, and arrangement as well. So for just a little bit of a background of music from Guinea, there's music in the village, traditional music that's in the village, and then there's music on stage. And each of the teachers explained where they were coming from. If they grew up in the village and they learned all of the music in this village, or, you know, if they were in Les Ballets Africains, for example. And you could tell in their teaching style which one they were coming from as well, or which one they were trying to portray to us. And in the village style, it's much more free, like everyone's in a big circle and everyone is participating, and everybody in the circle gets to take a dance solo. And so the drummers are playing for a long time because that's often a very large circle. In ballet style, it's arranged more like a Broadway show would be, for example, or a choreographed dance show, I guess, would be more relevant. And it's using traditional music in dance, but it's very arranged. And lots of costume changes and things like that. So back to my experience at this retreat, I highly recommend it. I think it was awesome, and it was in a beautiful location, the Pocono Mountains. It was like a Pocono Mountains Resort or something like that. It was basically just a campground. You could tell this is a place that was rented for camps, you know. So we were staying in cabins. There's also a tent campground as well. Meals were provided there on site, and you just pay one fee. You go, and you know you're really in a retreat location. So you're away from. It's close to New York City, about an hour and a half away, but you're far enough out where you're in the mountains and you're with people who are interested in the same thing, and just you get to hang with these master musicians and dancers from Guinea, which is really incredible. So that was my experience at the Wula Drum and Dance Treat. You guys should come join me next year.
That sounds
We
super
should. Man, thanks, Megan. We probably don't remind our listeners enough of this, but Megan is an ethnomusicologist as well as a percussionist.
That is true. Yes. Sometimes I forget that myself because it's so tied in. Like, you know, being an ethnomusicologist is like so tied into what we do as percussionists. It's like we know that we can't always just play music that's written down. We know that there's music outside of Europe and America. And we know that this music, you know, I don't know. I think we're drawn to this music and it's all kind of attached. Or, sorry, the third thing I was going to say was that we know that it's not just the music, that there's a story behind it and that this music is important to people somewhere and it came from somewhere. And I think naturally we're interested in where did that come from and who played it and how did it get here and does it still exist that way and how does that shape a society, for example. So I think percussion and ethnomusicology are just naturally born to be paired together.
And percussion and dance. Megan,
yes.
How do you feel that working with dance changed the way you play percussion?
Oh my gosh, it changed so much because something that I had to, I'm not a good dancer at all. And I was there with my friend Amy this week and we had a lot of discussions about this as percussionists. Because I've been becoming a lot more comfortable with dance over the past 10 years and I love doing it. It's so fun. But I was astonished at how hard it is for me just not being coordinated with my feet and even like playing drum, like we play drum set. Okay, I'm coordinated, but dancing is a whole nother element and your entire body is involved. So I think, and especially with this dance from Guinea, one of the teachers, Yusuf was his name, he kept saying, you have to be sweet, you have to be soft. And what he was saying is that you can have no tension in your body. Because if you have any tension, the move doesn't look right at all. You can't do it. You have to be so relaxed. And even though it's very athletic, it's very physical, and your whole body is into it, but you cannot have any tension. And I think it's the same with percussion, for so many things. And that was really hard for me as a percussionist, I think, removing tension from my body, and still is a challenge. But once I had kind of breakthroughs of how to relax and get rid of tension, I'm kind of having those same ones with dance now as I'm getting more comfortable with it. So, yeah, I think the physical aspects of the body, that's the main thing for me.
I sometimes.
And then, of course, in traditional music, you have to be able to understand the dance. If you're a drummer, you have to understand the dance. You have to know the dance because you have to know the function of the drumming for the dance. And like in this music from Guinea, you're dictating what the dancers do, and you're responding to what the dancers do. And in Ghana, you're playing calls and telling people to change. I mean, in both cultures, of course, but it's essential that you understand the drumming and the dancing and the singing. They all go together.
Are you a good singer, Megan?
No. Are you kidding me? I'm not a good singer and I'm not a good dancer.
I bet you're a good
but
singer.
I enjoy doing all of them now. And I've learned that you don't have to be good at it. Like, okay, it's okay if I'm just, better at drumming. That's okay. The important part is that you're participating in everything. And it makes you better because you're doing it all the time.
Megan,
Yeah,
this
and
question.
you understand the experience of dancers and of singers. Like, I wondered
Exactly.
why dancers count to 8. Because when I would play with modern dancers, I would think of 8s as just 2 4s, right? 1, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4. And I asked a dancer about that one day. I was like, why do you guys count to 8? She's like, okay, imagine if I had to go from here to over there. Like, I can't do it in 4 counts. I need 8 counts to travel across the floor. And it opened up
the average floor.
Exactly. Yeah, it opened that idea up for me.
That's interesting. Very cool. Have you played with dance a lot? Company dance?
A little bit. There's some great contemporary dance in San Diego. There's 2 or 3 ballet companies here, so there's tons of talented dancers. I did a project with my friend Vincent, a really talented tap dancer. A couple of years ago, we did some videos together.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was really eye-opening for me because also I can't dance to save my life or sing.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean it's challenging. How are you able to balance your continuing to play with your mallet making business? Are you able to still play a lot, or do you wish you could play more, or what kind of things are you doing?
That's a good question. So my teacher, Rusty Burge, is a professor at Cincinnati Conservatory, and he's another one of those people that it's like he's a consummate educator, he's a chamber musician, and he plays jazz. And he seems like he's busy all the time. And there was an article in the Inquirer in Cincinnati about him, and they called him pathologically busy. And I think that a lot of musicians, right? It's like we work all the time. But when your work is your hobby, then that line gets blurred. So I think for me, on the busy weeks, it gets challenging, when I have symphony concerts and PASIC is coming up, for example. We're making a lot of sense. But I think I see that more as a blessing than anything else. I mean, we get to participate in making art and largely making the art that we want to make. And I mean, if you were a doctor, my friends that are doctors are working 12-hour shifts and working 70 hours a week. And my buddies who are lawyers or real estate, like they work themselves to death too. So I don't know. I kind of enjoy it. And I enjoy the weird schedule too. Like my wife and I got to go visit her family in Norway for a couple of weeks this summer. And if you have a 9 to 5, it's hard to get away. So I really value it. I got to play Beethoven 7 recently at a little chamber music festival, and David Zinman was conducting. And brilliant maestro, he was the conductor of Baltimore for a long time, and Tonhalle and Zurich. And he walked in, and he came up to me, he said, "Young man, do you have wood sticks?" I said, "Yeah, maestro." He said, "Use them." So much fun playing Beethoven with wood sticks on little tiny drums.
Yeah,
it was great. It was like it was in Beethoven's time, and it was a cool experience, and I was glad to be a part of it.
One more Facebook question for Jason, and it comes from Brett Morris. He says, actually, I like this question because I'm always interested in what rep you guys like. Brett asks, what's your favorite timpani piece or part to play, and what mallets do you use for that?
Ooh, good question. Beethoven symphonies. I mean, I love playing Beethoven. The Brahms Requiem. I think that's one of my favorite pieces. There's something like a harder flannel stick I would use for that. Like the second movement, bum 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 bum, because it has to be very quiet, but it has to be articulate at the same time. So I think that's one example for me.
Oh, go ahead, Ben, please.
I was going to say, are there any timpani solos that you're familiar with other than Carter that people should know about? Because this is a question that often comes up, and I don't think there are all that many great timpani, solo pieces.
Good question, Ben. Are you familiar with the Delacroix timpani etudes?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're not solo so much. I mean, I guess the later ones could be played as solos. Those are pretty fantastic. There's a book by Eckhard Koine called Pauken, and that's got some solos in the back of it. That's a great resource, and it's more widely known in German. And then the Hochreiner solos, I grew up playing those, all three of those books. Oh, Koine.
You got it.
That's all we use.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I like this one a lot.
Yeah, I got the Hochreiner books
I gotta check it out.
when I was in high school, and I found a friend of mine who was taking high school German class, and I made her translate all of the German indications.
Nice.
Yeah.
She's like, "What's a verbal? What's a warble? Like, it's a roll."
That's
In your opinion, what do you think it is that is so hard about? Like, why don't we have better timpani solos? Why can't we seem to get that right?
That's a good question. Casey, maybe that's a question to throw back at you. I mean, is it an instrument that's challenging to write for? Because it's not especially a solo instrument.
Yeah, I think it's hard to write for sure.
Yeah, I mean, accepting the obvious limitations, there are some cool solos. Like, speaking of Philip Glass, the double concerto. That one's fun to play. There's really cool Baroque concertos that were written like 400 years ago for timpani. My buddy Douglas in New Mexico played one with the orchestra there last year. So that's like a concerto type piece. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a couple of those like super old ones that are written for like 8 drums. I mean, it's like crazy.
Yeah. You sent me the video of it, and I was like, dude, why didn't you just play it on like 3 drums and use the pedals? He's like, oh, wait a minute, it's way more fun this way.
Awesome.
Well, cool. You guys, thanks so much for episode 113. Megan and Ben, appreciate it. And thanks so much for the Facebook questions, everyone out there. And man, Jason Ginter, is so great to meet you.
Yeah, you too, guys. And are you guys going to be at PASIC this year?
Yep.
We'll be there.
Nice.
Yeah, Ben, are you going to be there?
I think so.
Oh, he's not going.
I haven't bought my ticket yet, but I'm planning on it.
He's not going. I just booked my hotel. There's still space in the
Me
the
too.
West End. You know what?
Yeah, I just did that
The
also.
weirdest thing, Megan, I thought I had already done it, and I was thinking about last year. I thought, oh yeah, no,
Oh my gosh.
I totally did it. Oh yeah, I was sure. I was talking to Laura. I was like, oh, I'm pretty sure I did it already. And I went and looked for it in my email, and it said 2016. I was like, oh my god,
Shoot.
no way. Like I don't know. That's how fast the year feels, or something.
We're in the future, Casey.
Yeah.
Oy. Hey, you guys. Well, thanks so much. We'll catch you next time.
Sounds
Awesome.
good.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.